Talk Radio, you're in to all things music.
78s, 45s, LPs, 8-track cassettes, CDs, downloads, streams. Our job is to help you as an artist get your music out to the marketplace where it can be consumed.
Welcome to Making It with Terry Woolman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Woolman.
Welcome to Making It with me, your host, Terry Woolman. I really appreciate you joining us every week. Thank you. You can find all of our episodes on entertalkmedia.com, Spotify, and iTunes podcast at Making It with Terry Woolman. I created this show to focus on what it takes to have a lasting career in the ever-changing landscape of the entertainment business. And as you know, I always try to switch it up with my guest. We talk to artists, attorneys, publicists, I try to, even actors and painters and dancers, really this show is about the artistic life, but also how to make a living, and how to have a happy life along the way. So I'm really excited about my guest today, because we're going to be talking about disc makers and CD Baby with the CEO of the company, Tony Van Veen. And, and I have a personal connection, not with Tony, but with the company, because as an independent recording artist, like many of you, these are the companies that I use and rely on and have had great experiences with. So I thought it'd be really wonderful to speak to the person who has been really in this company for many, many years. And we're going to talk about that. So let me tell you a little bit about Tony. Tony Van Veen began his music career as a punk rock drummer and worked his way up to becoming the CEO of AVL Digital Group, the parent company of disc makers and CD Baby. He has spent over 30 years helping independent artists release, distribute, and promote their own music and movies. Disc Makers is the world leader in CD and DVD manufacturing for independent artists and filmmakers, producing over 60,000 independent titles a year. CD Baby, the largest independent music store and digital distributor in the world with 350,000 independent album titles and over 4.8 million songs in its catalog, is the biggest content provider to iTunes, Amazon, and streaming service providers like radio and Spotify. In 1987, Tony began his career with Disc Makers, starting as a sales and marketing associate. And with a life of dedicated focus, vision, passion, success, and extreme challenges followed by new success, he is joining me today to share his story. Tony Van Veen, welcome to Making It.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
My absolute pleasure. And I wanted to let you know that, besides being a customer, the thing that really motivated me to invite you onto the show was your Indie Music Minute video series, which I get via email as a user and customer and artist. And I find them really interesting, concise, short, personable. And I wanted to tell you that I'm sure you know from your your marketing team, but it really has kept me, it has kept you in the forefront, you and your company. When I am putting music out there, I'm always thinking about you and your company as part of the formula for success. So I wanted to just compliment you on that and thank you for doing those videos.
Well, thank you, Terry. And look, we try to educate artists. There's a lot of confusion among independent artists on, what should they be focusing on and what should they be doing next. And over the years at Disc Makers, we've accumulated quite a bit of knowledge and understanding of how the market works and things that artists should be focusing on. And so I figured, a concise little video series, something short and punchy, every week might be a way to get something done. And I've really been enjoying them because at the bottom of every one, I put a link to my actual email address, and it allows me, because I'm the CEO of the company, I usually don't get to interact with artists directly unless I'm either at a conference or some project has gone really awfully wrong and I'm the only guy who can fix it. And so, which fortunately happens very, very infrequently.
Right.
But this is a way for me on a weekly basis, on a Saturday, I'll get half a dozen to a dozen, sometimes a couple dozen emails. And I really enjoy some direct interaction with the artist. I do want to slightly update the bio.
Thank you.
That you
sure.
Started out with, because for a couple of reasons. One, CD Baby, since that bio has grown significantly. Instead of 350,000 artists, they currently distribute 750,000 artists. And instead of 4.8 million songs in the catalog, there are close to 10 million songs in the catalog that they distribute. So I'm pretty sure that's the largest independent music distribution company. The other thing I need to update is I'm actually no longer the CEO of AVL Digital Group. As some artists may have read, about 6 weeks ago, AVL Digital Group was sold to Downtown Music Holdings, which is the parent company of Downtown Music Publishing, which for years has been CD Baby's publishing monetization partner. And my executive team and I in New Jersey, where I'm based, where Discmaker's headquarters is, actually acquired the assets of Discmakers and our book publishing company, Book Baby, and our band merch company, Merchly. And we started a new corporate entity called DIY Media Group, called DIY because our artists all pretty much own their own content and want to get it to market by themselves. And so, Downtown Music Publishing, they're a digital company, and they wanted to focus strictly on the digital side of the business. So the CD Baby and our YouTube monetization brand, AdRev, and a few other brands. And we're still close partners. We have an exclusive partnership agreement with CD Baby, so we work together very closely. I obviously know everybody there very well. But I am pretty squarely at this point in time focused primarily on manufacturing, producing, promoting physical media, and helping artists basically make money with that.
Thank you for clarifying that. And I had a feeling, because I went to multiple sources, including reading the information that you sent me, that your new title was actually CEO DIY Media Group. But I figured it would come up in the conversation. So I appreciate that. One of the things that you had said in a recent video clip of yours was that you consider yourself extremely fortunate that you've been able to combine your personal passion for music with your profession. And that sure. Stuck out to me. And I already hear it in your voice and in the conversation. The fact that you give your email out, clearly you don't have the time to manage all of the projects that you do and, talk to everybody all the time. But like you said, the fact that you make yourself accessible for conferences, mentoring, and also when something goes wrong, that you actually step up shows the integrity that you have been bringing to everything that you do, starting as a punk rock drummer. And, so let's go back a little bit, because before we talk more about the company and about the state of our music business and where you think it's going, I want to talk about where you came from and really what made you who you are, that has enabled you to continue to be, like I said, a visionary and what's happening, being a problem solver, bringing your artistic and business skills together. So let's talk about you growing up in Aruba, moving to the U.S. to go to college, meeting your wife, Farina, and playing in a punk rock band. Tell me about your early years and what that was like and what led you to where you are today.
Well, I as you mentioned, I grew up in Aruba. I was born in Amsterdam, Holland. My father's Dutch. My mother's from Aruba. And in Aruba, back in the early 80s, when I went to high school, there was no university. So kids had to leave the country to pursue further education. And I decided I wanted to come to the United States, and I wanted to go to business school. And I applied to a number of business schools, and I got into the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, much to my surprise, and because I was just some kid from the islands, and
right.
And so I got in, and I came to the university. I started taking courses, and I fell in with some kids on my dorm floor randomly who were into punk rock. And so they invited me to go to a gig one night. And I'm like, yeah, sure. I never heard punk rock. I mean, I was, I'm a white guy, but like culturally, having grown up on an island, I was an island boy, listening
right.
to, reggae and Latin music, et cetera. And so when I was at this gig, and I mean, when the first band started, the noise was just overwhelming. I was like, whoa, I'd never heard anything like that.
You're taking me back. Right. I remember that.
I was so green that, when the mosh pit started, I actually thought a big fight had broken out. I'd never seen anything like that.
Right.
And so, I kind of moved my way towards the back wall, and I kind of stood there and observed, but, met some other cool kids and drank some beer, and, so a few weeks later, it was another gig. I got invited again, and, lather, rinse, repeat after a few times. I basically was, into it, and had some friends, and they decided, let's start a band. And I'm like, this is it. I had always wanted to play drums. I grew up playing alto sax. And always wanted to play drums. And I thought, it's punk rock. How hard could it be? So my audition was pretty much literally the first time I ever sat behind a drum kit.
Which made you perfectly qualified for the genre.
I got the gig. And so I literally learned to play drums while being in the band.
Right.
And going from there, when you start in a band with a bunch of other fellow bandmates who you don't really know, the first thing you always start doing is, jamming on some songs everybody knows, and so, Dr. Love by Kiss and some other songs. And then at one point in time, the guitarist said, hey, how about we write a song? And I was like, like my mind was blown. Like, wait, we can do that? You don't have to go to Juilliard or Berklee College of Music and learn composition? And so we started writing some songs. We got, pretty soon thereafter, when we knew 4 songs, we got our first gig. We were the first band on a bill with 6 bands, and we played our 4 songs, and it was like amazing. People were moshing and stage diving, and we got off stage, and we actually got an encore, and I remember we're standing, my bandmates and I, looking at each other on the side of the stage, like, we got an encore. We played all the songs. What do we do now?
We don't have a 5th song.
So we went and we played one of the songs again.
Sure.
So that's how you create a hit, folks. Take a song and play it over and over. Before you know it, it'll be a hit.
Right. Valuable lesson.
So we, the punk rock in the mid 80s was really the vanguard of the do-it-yourself music movement. Up to then, artists followed a traditional path, sending demos to labels, hoping to get signed, and then, releasing all their product through labels. And it was really the do-it-yourself ethos of the punk rock movement that planted the seed that today is really how musicians in general go to market. Every musician knows, if I want to have a music career, I have to make my own discs. I have to get myself onto all the streaming platforms myself. I have to do all of this and release myself first, and maybe do it 2, 3, 4 times, build up a fan base, build up some revenues, and then hopefully I can get signed if that is still something that I want as an artist. But we as punk rockers, we had to do this because no radio station would play us. Maybe a little bit of college radio. Distributors wouldn't really carry our stuff. So we recorded ourselves. We got our own records pressed. We sold them out of the back of the van. And so when I graduated, this literally got me through college, because I did not enjoy business school, but music provided.
I find that really interesting that you just said that, Tony, because you did become not just a businessman, but a successful businessman. So it's interesting. I would have expected that you would have also enjoyed business school, but I can see why the music was filled you, and compelled you.
Look, business school was filled with a bunch of type A assholes who were worried how young they were going to be by the time they made their first million. And to me, business was never first about making money. It was first about doing something that I am passionate about and solving a problem for our clients, who are also very passionate. Right. And so when I graduated, I decided I want to work in the record business, and I don't care what it takes. And so I started looking and sending out resumes, and ultimately I ended up at Discmakers in 1987, fresh out of college. Discmakers was a small regional vinyl record pressing plant, and based in Philly. And that's where I started, entry level. I worked for the owner. There were, I don't know, maybe 30 employees back in the day. And I started to get some marketing work that he needed done. And I answered phones, and I handled customers, and whatever, in a small entrepreneurial environment, whatever needed to be done, I did.
Where did you get that work ethic from? Is that something your mom and dad taught you, or you just had it? If you do something that you love, work is not work. And right. So you will gladly put in the hours. I mentioned earlier, I get emails from clients on weekends, and it's a little bit of a fun diversion for me. It's not work, because I love what I do. Right. That's a really important thing. And, but it's, it always mystifies me that when people kind of miss the obvious, that if you do something that you love and you commit yourself and you're focused and passionate about it, then, you'll have a good life. Things will work out. There'll be challenges, but, you have a much better chance of having what I consider a successful life. It's hard to make money as an independent artist nowadays, and particularly with streaming, as you know yourself, Terry. Over the past 15, 20 years, the average transaction for music, for a piece of music, has gone from, $10, $15 for a CD to 99 cents for an iTunes download to a quarter of a penny for a Spotify stream. Right. And so for independent artists, that has made it hard. That has made it hard to make a living. And yet there are tons of artists. There are probably more artists than ever at this point in time creating and releasing content. And many artists are frustrated that streaming pays so little, but they're still doing it. And artists are doing it for the same reason, that I do this job, because for us as artists, as musicians, there's tremendous joy and tremendous reward just in the fact that you can be an artist, that you can write songs, that you can make music. And even if you make no money, now obviously the goal is not to make no money, but even if you make no money, there is a tremendous amount of fulfillment that comes from that. And over the decades, I have, shifted my fulfillment out of playing music towards marketing and selling, a music service for our clients. But to me, it's just as creative. Business in and of itself is creative, just like music is. And many artists don't really see that. And when I talk to artists, you can't just be a musician. You also have to put on your business hat from time to time. Absolutely. They don't like that. But I think that it's a little bit myopic. They don't see, they haven't invested the time or energy into seeing that, wait a minute, writing a newsletter is also creative.
engaging with clients on social media is also creative. Pitching my music, to a radio program director is also, creative in a certain way, honing your pitch and convincing them that they should play you.
I'm so glad you said that. And I agree, and it had to be pointed out to me earlier on in my career as well, that eventually it all becomes one and the same when you quit resisting it. And and I agree. It's all very creative, and it's all a part of the experience of, coming up with new music and releasing it to the world. You have to be involved and have your hands in the dirt and be willing, to learn more about marketing and branding and distribution and, how to proofread, or work with your art directors and, all of those things. And the sooner artists understand that, the sooner more doors open for them. And, you're talking about streaming, and before we move on to that, I was curious what your position is on the current royalty rates that are being paid to composers for streaming. I know you have an opinion, as do I. But is that something like, do you stay sort of neutral on that, or are you involved in speaking to Congress and trying to get the royalty rates higher? Where do you stand with all of this?
It's a real conundrum. There are a lot of complaints from musicians about how little streaming companies pay, and obviously the royalty that gets paid to publishers or songwriters, is a part of that. And by all means, I support the recent decision by the royalty board to increase the payments to songwriters and to publishers. I have not gotten involved in actively advocating in Washington, D.C. However, as I mentioned, CD Baby and our partner Song Trust, who now is the new owner, who is one of the largest independent publishers out there, are very actively working on that front, and they have a really prominent voice in that. So, this is one of the reasons. Obviously, there was a whole kerfuffle recently with Spotify challenging the rate hike, and
right.
That has created some bad blood between the publishing industry and Spotify, and we'll have to see how that plays out. Because for a company like Spotify, the more in royalties, their revenues, the royalties paid are basically a flat percent of revenues, right? And if they have to pay a higher royalty, that eats into whatever net revenues they get to keep after the rights holders are paid. So that puts a squeeze on them, and that's one of the reasons, I would imagine why they are, looking to appeal this and reduce the growth in the songwriter and publishing royalties.
Right. Well, yeah, I figured it probably dicey, for you to get over involved. But I knew that you would have an opinion, because you're also a musician, and an artist. So, one of the questions that I get asked a lot from other artists, and many of them are Billboard Top 10 artists, and we're always trying to figure out all the streaming options that you offer, because one of the things that you do offer when you're doing a distribution deal, with CD Baby or disc makers. They're two different companies, of course, but is whether you want to sign on for just the major streaming avenues, or if it makes sense just to hit all and let it be for everything that's available and anything that might come down the pike in perpetuity. What's your philosophy on that? Does it make sense? I guess because a lot of artists just look at streaming as what it is. It's a way to promote your music. And
that's the right way. That's the right way to look at it, because certainly it's not a way for the average independent artist to pay the mortgage, right?
Even the above average independent
exactly,
artist.
Exactly. So the streaming payments are really small, and it's really mostly advantageous to to the majors, right? Because the majors
Yes.
effectively get money for nothing. They have no direct cost. There's no manufacturing costs to anything that gets streamed. And they sit on these huge legacy catalogs that they already got us since the 70s to pay for the vinyl and then to pay for the cassette. And then now when it went to downloads, I think most of us probably ripped our CDs to iTunes. And so we may not have all paid for downloads. But certainly now with streaming, you know, if I listen to U2 again, right? YouTube is U2, that U2 album, Joshua Tree, they're getting paid for the third time, right? First on vinyl, then on cassette, then on CD, and now again for streaming. So this is a huge boondoggle for the majors. But for DIY artists, there's not a lot of money. But it is an amazing promo platform, right? Your music is available instantly worldwide, everywhere people listen to streaming music.
Yes.
And so I always choose for some of my music and recommend artists be everywhere. Stop looking at Spotify as really primarily a monetization platform, though you want to monetize it. But stop being frustrated that Spotify is not paying the rent for you, and start looking at it as, you know what, but it is a good tool to help me, spread the name of my act and my music. And then it's up to you, obviously, to create the demand. One of the things that artists complain to us about is, man, I've had my music on CD Baby, and you guys didn't do anything to promote us. And
that's not your job.
And so I tell them, that's not our job. Right?
That's right. It's not.
I should stop referring to CD Baby as we, but it's still relatively recent, and they are our partner. The CD Baby's job is not to promote artists. They have 750,000 artists. It's impossible to promote all of them. But their job is to provide the pipe to the marketplace. And that's what a distributor does. And it's up to the artist, or if you're on a label, up to the label to create the demand that once the music is available, that people seek it out and want to listen to it.
And, one of the things about your videos that I enjoy are your tips, and I want to encourage everybody, and we are going to post the websites where you can go find all these things. But Tony, you can tell everybody right now that the places where they can find you and get your weekly information. Which websites would you like them to go to? Well,
the Indie Music Minutes are at Discmaker's YouTube channel. So go to YouTube and search for the Discmakers channel, and you can subscribe there. And besides that, discmakers.com is where you can get discs made. And we have a little sister company called Merchly that does really affordable, high-quality band merch, T-shirts, hats, etc. And that is merch.ly.
Right, merch.ly. And you also have bookbaby.com.
We do as
authors.
Well. Yep. And we're 10 years ago, when everybody around us started getting Kindles for the holidays, we're like, hey, we know how this works. We're in this business. We do this for musicians. And now there's a nascent market for authors who want to get their own content out to market. And so we very quickly put together an ebook publishing platform. We were a launch partner with Apple when they launched the iPad. And then very shortly thereafter, authors started asking us, hey, could you print us some books? And we're like, yeah, sure. And we quickly figured out how to print books for authors because we were already printing CD covers. So we knew the basics of printing, obviously.
Right, because you're a one-stop, which makes you a unique company. Yep. Instead of doing your graphics and printing elsewhere, you can do everything.
Right, and so that got us into the book publishing business, where we do for independent authors the same that we do for independent artists. And yes, back to your point, Terry, on the doing the printing. I do believe that Discmakers is the only disc factory in the U.S. that does all its own printing of not just like jewel case inserts, but board products, digipacks, wallets, etc. And because we do that ourselves, it allows us to control the quality and it allows us to deliver much faster than any of our competitors, because we don't have to be shipping inserts back and forth to a printer and from a printer to the factory.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I love the Digipacks, and that's what I use. I love how they look. There's a lot of options for design when I work with my graphic designer, with whether you want inserts or fold outs and how many panels. But the other thing, it's environmentally conscious. And thank you for that. Is that something that you had to fight hard for, or is that sort of a no-brainer to offer?
It's a beautiful package. You know what happened? Great. If I can, go back in time a little bit, back in the early days of the Digipack, which was, I don't know, it was probably close to 20 years ago by now. Mm-hmm. We weren't printing them, and there were certain printers that were, and the minimum order was 2,500. And we looked at this and we said, wait a minute, no independent artist needs 2,500. They need 1,000. They need 500. Mm-hmm. And no printer would sell us that few. And so it basically made a Digipack unaffordable for the average independent artist. And at the time, we had a paper print shop. We printed paper inserts for jewel cases, but we did not print board. And board comes with, a whole bunch of additional processing. You have to put high gloss or matte UV coating on it. You need to do die cutting. You need to do folding and gluing. And we decided we're going to get into this. We're going to get licensed to do the Digipack, because there was a licensed fee that you had to pay for it. And we're going to focus on offering Digipacks to independent artists in small quantities. And that's how we got into it, because there was a real need to get away from as much plastic as the jewel case contained. There was real demand from artists, but no artist could afford 2,500. And so we got into that. And frankly, we pissed off a bunch of printers, because we were the only guys offering it in small quantities. We were able to offer it really affordably, in a high quality. Artists loved it. And all of a sudden, that kind of forced everybody else to go down to doing 1,000 quantity or even less, when before they were sitting around fat and happy doing orders of 2,500 and up.
Right, but it was not realistic anymore. And one of the things that I appreciate about you, especially like when you're talking about when you saw that everybody got Kindles and that there was another opportunity opening up for you, that you don't resist it, you embrace it, and you did the same. When you got major challenged when Napster came out, and you had a front row seat to to this new technology coming, and where all the record labels were pretty condescending and thought, well, we don't, they had the opportunity to buy the technology and they mm-hmm. didn't. And it created this huge shift that impacted all of us as artists, you as an artist, but also you as a manufacturer. But at that same time, you started getting into digital distribution, and you're always, from what I know of you, you're always looking forward and to what is next. So I have two questions for you. One is, I'm sitting at the front row, really watching the onset of Napster. What was that like, when you saw it coming? And also, where do you think we're going? What do you see next for music industry? Because, we certainly don't make a living from selling albums anymore. The paradigm is you try to break even on a record and you make your money from live performances, which has gotten harder because that freeway's gotten more crowded. So also promoters are less apt to hire you because everybody's holding on to dear life for their tour and festival spots, so, I know there's more coming, and you probably have a decent idea of what you predict. So Napster and what's next?
Discmakers was founded in 1946 to press 78 RPM shellac discs. And over the decades, we had migrated through all the formats up to the time that I got there in 1987. So 78s, 45 RPM singles, 33 RPM albums, 8 tracks, cassettes and CDs at the time, right?
Yes.
Because the CDs came in around 1990. 1999, I remember practically the day, not quite, but I remember seeing Napster and seeing that I could now get music without a physical product. And it scared the living daylights out of me because I'm thinking we have to figure out how to do this for our artists and help them make money, because otherwise this business is going to be a dinosaur and we're going to become extinct. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we never looked at ourselves as a record pressing factory or a CD manufacturing factory. Our job, our intent was not, we're going to be the last man standing making CDs. We looked at ourselves as being in the business of helping artists and now authors get their content to market, regardless of the format, right? As 78s, 45s, LPs, 8-track cassettes, CDs, downloads, streams. Our job is to help you as an artist get your music out to the marketplace where it can be consumed and where you can get paid. And so there wasn't, I tried to figure out how do I make money from this Napster thing. And obviously in the early days, there was no revenue model to Napster. It was just peer-to-peer sharing, aka piracy.
Right.
And so, you know, I kind of hung around the hoop thinking about this. And shortly thereafter, I discovered this little company, CD Baby, which was selling independent artists' CDs online through a website. It had nothing to do with downloads at the time. They were just selling CDs online. But back in the day, to sell your CDs online, you still needed traditional distribution, you know, and independent artists could not get traditional distribution by and large. So in order to get into Amazon, or if you remember it, blast from the past, a company like CD Now that was selling a ton of CDs, you still needed a traditional distributor. And so the average DIY artists were still kind of blocked out. And so I thought, hey, CD Baby, this is a channel for our artists to at least be able to easily sell their product from anywhere, so long as somebody has a web browser. And so I made a deal with Derek Sivers, who was the owner of the business and the founder of the business, to get our clients to CD Baby. And then we started sending our clients there. And in 2004,
those were the package deals that you guys offer, the promotions, right?
Yeah. And in 2004, when the iTunes store was about to launch, Derek had the vision to digitize his full CD catalog onto several hard drives and drop it off at Apple headquarters in Cupertino. And all of a sudden, CD Baby was in the digital distribution business.
I love this story.
Now, finally, there was a way to monetize the download. That didn't start really in any substantive way until 2004, 4 years after Napster, 5 years maybe after Napster jumped onto the scene. And so from there, I thought, okay, this partnership is great, but honestly, I'm just helping CD Baby get bigger, faster, right? Discmakers is still under threat of becoming a dinosaur.
That's right.
and so over time, Derek and I developed a friendship, and in 2008, after every conversation that I would end with, "Hey, Derek, if you ever get tired of running this baby, call me. I'm a buyer." And so in 2008, we were able to negotiate the acquisition of CD Baby, and bring that into the family. Yes,
it's an amazing story. So
it's been a fun ride. I've been blessed with a very very interesting ride.
That's for sure. And also a very unique situation. Like you said, the only job that you've ever had, for over 30 years is at the same place, although you've had more than 5 different, positions. And
I've had many jobs, but I've had only one employer.
Right. Probably hard to envision that growing up in Aruba.
Look, it was hard to envision when I started working at Discmakers. The place was really rather decrepit. It was a small little vinyl pressing plant in a small little basement of a 7-story building, And, when it was so decrepit that when it rained outside, the rain would literally come through 7 floors, and we'd have huge puddles on our pressing plant floor. But that's what it was. It was my entree into the business side of the music business.
Glamorous.
Yes.
So what do you think's next? I mean, what should we as artists be looking for, or, for sources of revenue as composers? Because we're always going, like you said, you do this for the joy. You're a musician and you write music for the joy of writing. So do I. And I've had people say making albums is for dinosaurs, word that you used. And I still think that it's a beautiful art form to create a whole record, that has an arc and a story, regardless of, how that can be monetized. It's certainly part of every decision, that's made when I do a record. Like you've broken down the numbers, for now, as an independent artist. I'm looking through my notes right now, but I believe that you said if you have a $20,000, here it is, if you have a $20,000 all-in budget, to record and do the artwork and distribution, you sell them for an average of $15 a CD. You can, if you sell 8,000 CDs, you earn $40,000. So, that was like a really clear breakdown of how and why people, should be doing this independently. You've also pointed out at taxi rallies, I've seen videos of you speaking that, it's not that easy to sell 8,000 CDs.
No, I mean, who sells 8,000 CDs? I think you see albums charting in the top Billboard chart with under 5,000 CDs sold, physical products sold. Now,
I'm one of them. I'm one of them. So I agree.
So your question of what's next is I don't know. Okay. I know what I feel is missing. I think one of the things that's missing as we've gone through to the age of streaming. And by the way, I'm not a streaming skeptic. As a consumer, I love streaming, and I'm an avid listener, and I listen to most of my music in the car and on a plane, and that all comes from my phone. Mm-hmm. And
I love streaming as well. It's a great way for me to constantly inhale new music and new artists.
As a consumer, it's great. But I think the thing that's missing is the brand building element of having a really nice physical product. You remember the first CD you made, where you look at the CD and you think, wow, this is me, right? Yeah, I'm for real. And giving somebody a nice CD,
it's tangible.
Really legitimizes you as an artist. Yes. And it doesn't just legitimize you. It builds your brand. It builds your aura. It builds your story. And so I miss that. And I feel that is one of the things that has driven for the past 6, 7, 8 years this vinyl revival that we've seen.
Yes.
Where it's the physical product, it's the big graphics, the big artwork. It's kind of there's almost a communal, experiential listening environment experience where you sit around and you drop that needle on a record, and it's really I think that's missed when I'm on Spotify and I hear a great recording by an artist I like. I want to know who played bass on that, or where was that recorded.
Oh, yes.
It's missing. And so I do believe that there will continue to be a role for physical media. And obviously, if I didn't believe that, I would not have bought a CD manufacturing plant in the year 2019.
Right. For a lot of money. Right.
But, I do believe that this is part of the artist's overall toolkit.
Yes,
it's hard, as we talked about already. It's hard to make money, so you have to grab every strand of revenue that you can. And we have a saying at Disc Makers, people buy for many reasons, and so we want to cover as many reasons as possible for them to buy. And, it's the same thing for you as an artist. People want to buy or consume your music in many formats. And so if you skip out on a format, whether it's vinyl or CD or streaming, because I still hear from a lot of artists who are like, screw those guys. They're making billions and they're paying nothing. I'm not going to be on Spotify. And I think that's misguided. It's limited because that's where people are. That's where the market is, and that's where people are listening. But you should be checking all of these boxes. And with manufacturing nowadays, you can make 100 CDs and they can be commercial and have barcodes and be professionally shrink wrapped. You don't have to make a lot, but you need physical product. You need merch. You need to be on the streaming platforms. You need to monetize your publishing. You need to monetize YouTube, register your content with YouTube so that, YouTube can run those ads and pay you, 1/100th of a penny per view, whatever it is. Why leave any money on the table as an artist, as a content creator? And so you need to be everywhere. And then whatever the next format is, just go there. Just like Discmakers has. Look, there was a story, a very famous analogy. In the early part of the last century, the railroads were the main transportation, format. And after the Second World War, the government invested massively in creating a highway network. And all of a sudden, trucking companies started to be able to, move freight around. And the railroads said, we're in the railroad business. This is what we do. We transport products by rail. And so over a few decades, the trucking companies ended up eating the railroad's lunch, where now trucking is by far the biggest way that freight gets transported. If the railroads had just not thought we're in the railroad business, but had thought we are in the transportation business, they could have owned the trucking business and the rail business and been so much bigger than they are today. And it's the same thing with us as artists. We have to think of ourselves as entertainers and as sellers of product. Right? If you want to make money, a transaction has to happen at some point in time, whether it's a T-shirt or a CD or a vinyl record or a concert ticket or a stream that somebody listens to or a YouTube view. And we have to be there to monetize all of
it. Well, there's a lot of clarity to what you just said, and I absolutely agree. You mentioned artists, looking, making sure that they capture all the opportunities for revenue for their music, registering with YouTube, et cetera. Do you have a list on your website that artists can go to make sure that they know all of the people that they should be registering their music with? I know that you provide services, but do you also provide sort of a map where people should be looking, because it's constantly evolving and a lot of people don't know and they're missing out on revenue?
I don't know that we have a map specifically of every single thing where you need to register to monetize your music, but we do have a place, and you touched on, right? When you go to CD Baby to distribute your music, which is really cheap, for $49 you can distribute an album, and for another, I think $30 you can collect all your publishing royalties, your YouTube royalties, your streaming royalties. You can distribute your physical product. So CD Baby, our partner CD Baby, can basically, for a very modest fee, get your music in front of and into all the channels pretty much where your music can be monetized, including working with ASCAP and BMI and the PROs to help with performance royalties, where we actually register your songs. Because a lot of ASCAP and BMI members think they're going to make money from public performance, but they don't register their songs with ASCAP and BMI. And so ASCAP and BMI doesn't know to pay them for those songs.
And they're happy to sit on that money and not pay.
Yeah, happy. And or distributed, in their black box distributions to the big companies. Then, and we help with sound exchange collections as well. So when I say we, I mean CD Baby. So I think that, for $79 or whatever it is for the full package, and CD Baby runs, they run specials from time to time where it's even cheaper.
Great.
Just do it with them, and it'll be much cheaper than you figuring out how to do it all yourself.
Okay. I encourage everybody to go check that out. We have about 7 minutes left in our conversation, so I want to get to our closing questions. The first is a two-part question. Since this show is called Making It, what does making it mean to you both personally and professionally? And the second part of the question is, can you share 3 tips for success that have driven your career? So first, making it. What does that mean to you?
To me, making it means having a fulfilling, rewarding career that is able to provide a comfortable living and allows for balance in my life. That's making it. And I think that applies to probably anybody and everybody. I was recently speaking to somebody who said, I really value my balance right now. I have a family. I can't tour anymore, but I still make music. I do live concerts on YouTube. And, when I was in my 20s, I was all in with music, and I thought balance was a dirty word. And now that I'm a little older, I really value that balance. And so, and for me, it's the same thing. I can be creative. I'm not creative anymore really by writing music, but doing these little YouTube videos, writing the occasional email, doing marketing planning and so on allows me to be creative, continuing to figure out how to grow and evolve this business. It puts the proverbial pork chop on the table. And I've always been blessed, to be able to have balance and be able to go home, when my kids were little and have dinner with the family. And then at night at 8:00 when the kids had to go to bed or do their homework, if there was more work to be done, I'd open up the laptop and, work till 10 or 11 or whatever was necessary. So to me, that's making it. And I think one of the challenges with being a recording artist, a musical artist, is the industry has kind of foisted a singular view of making it on the artist, which is in order to make it, you got to be at or near the top of the Billboard charts. And that leaves every other artist who is not at the top of the Billboard charts feeling they failed. And I think that is such an unfortunate and skewed perspective of what making it is. There's so much fulfillment, and so much reward to be gotten from a musical career without ever coming to, the number one spot on the Billboard charts.
Well said. 3 tips for success that have driven your career.
Keep my ears open, listen to people. People have good ideas. Listen what's going on with the clients, and obviously, and follow up on them. Keep the customer first and foremost in mind. Offer real value is the second one, where, we always try to price our services fairly, because when we're putting pricing together, when we're putting product offerings together, we really think, is there an ROI for the client in this? When we put out this product, and then thirdly, I think be yourself and do the right thing. I think the do the right thing is just it's such a huge part of everybody's success. You have folks who become successful who don't always do the right thing, and more often than not, eventually they'll stub their toe. And so I think just kind of there are so many rules and so many things, but you'd have to book me for the next month worth of podcasts for us to talk all of them. So those are probably the listen. offer real value and do the right thing.
Yeah, very underrated tips, especially doing the right thing. I'm glad that you said that.
Can I offer one quick tip to musicians?
Yes.
My biggest single tip for achieving success as an artist: learn how to write great songs.
Yes.
Please. I mean, I see stuff coming through our plant, and some of it looks amazing. We see these beautiful covers that our team has designed or other designers, and I want to listen to it, and I listen to it. And nowadays with recording technologies, the recording quality is great, but the chorus doesn't sing, right? And it's just, boy, if you can't catch me with a hook, if you can't hook me with that chorus, I'm out. And so, and a lot of artists feel, well, I don't play pop music. I don't need to bother with this or that. And they're so wrong. You need to learn the rules and know the rules before you can break them. And a great song, by no means, it does not guarantee success, but a mediocre song guarantees failure. And so working with other songwriters, going to, songwriting seminars, there's a bunch of gurus out there who do this kind of stuff and work with songwriters. It's my top tip for any songwriter, no matter how good you think you are.
I absolutely agree. In our final 60 seconds of the show, my final question, at this point of your life, Tony, with everything that you know to be true, what would you tell your younger self?
Yeah, I'm assuming you're saying, what would I tell them that was any different from what my younger self did? And I actually would tell them nothing different. I was very fortunate to, be able to pursue my passion, and that made a lot of hard work easy.
I'm glad to hear you say that. Tony, thank you so much for spending the hour with us. Everybody go to the website, use these services. I do. I have a bias because I've had great experiences with both of your companies. Thank you. And is there anything? We have 10 seconds. The floor is yours.
No, just thank you. I really enjoyed this little stroll down memory lane. Check us out, dismakers.com. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and look forward to answering any inquiries.
Tony Van Veen, thank you for spending the hour, and thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Tune in again next week for another great episode of Making It with Terry Woolman.